everyone. I'm starting us a few minutes early because this American Kestrel is doing some wonderful preening and stretching, and I was just getting really sad thinking about it not being on video. So we're just gonna hang out for just a minute here while our live viewers join us and just kind of watch her look around. Hopefully she'll get back to it. It is a little drizzly this Tuesday morning here in Minnesota, so all of the birds are doing a lot of feather care after being out and taking a little impromptu shower this morning. So we'll see if she wants to do any more right now. All of her feathers are just very fluffed up, so I wanted to make sure people got a chance to see that. So welcome back, everyone, to Reading with Raptors on this again fine, kind of drizzly Tuesday morning in the Twin Cities. We are here today with one of our resident American Kestrels. This is a bird that we call Sienna, after that nice kind of brown, stripy kind of color that she has, especially you can see here on her kind of chest and tummy. We'll see if we can get a little bit closer later on. Also that kind of nice chestnutty brown color that you can see on those wings. American Kestrels are one of the relatively few raptor species where the males and females tend to look a little bit different. So that sienna, or that brown stripy color, is actually a way that we can be fairly confident that this is a female bird. Of course, in the natural world, things are very, very, very varied, very different amongst individuals, but in general, tends to be the case. So this is Sienna, the American Kestrel. I thought an American Kestrel would be a great choice today because we are actually reading the sequel to a book we read, I think in April or May, a while ago now. We read a book called An Egg is Quiet, and one of our amazing volunteers actually found the sequel, A Nest is Noisy, also by Dianna Hutts Aston and Sylvia Long. So this is the first sequel that we are reading on Reading with Raptors, so I'm very excited. And we had an American Kestrel, a different American Kestrel for that one, so I figured American Kestrel was a good fit for today. So we'll read this book and see there's amazing artwork and pictures in this one I'm really excited about. And we can talk a little bit about American Kestrels. Before we start too, while you're looking at the Facebook page, we just put out an amazing video about one of our latest online programs called Raptor Zoomies for getting a raptor to kind of sit in on one of your online meetings, whether it's a social gathering, a family thing, or an actual business meeting. Make it a little bit more exciting with a raptor, so check that out. We are also doing a little bit of a contest where we're giving away one for free to one of our current frontline responders during this kind of global health crisis. So if you have any names you want to suggest for that, check out our latest Facebook post, probably right below this, maybe on Facebook. And check that one out, and if you know anybody who you think would be very deserving of an extra few minutes of time with a raptor online, check that out and put their name in there. So let's get started with our American Kestrel and A Nest is Noisy. Here right away on the front, actually, it says right away that this is the nest of a ruby-throated hummingbird. You can see it's just covered in little bits of moss. So already seeing a very cool nest. Here's the inside cover too. It looks like just a bunch of nesting material. And then again, just like An Egg is Quiet, which I really enjoyed a lot, this is all a bunch of different nests of a lot of different animals, not just birds. As I think we'll find out, it's not just birds who are making nests. So I might have to cover her up on occasion because there are just so many excellent details in this one. All right. A nest is noisy. It is a nursery of chirping. Here's actually another close-up of the ruby-throated hummingbird in their nest. So it is a nursery of chirping, buzzing, squeaking, peeping, bubbling babies. So here we have a honeybee nest. Here we have American alligators coming out of their eggs. Here we have a fox squirrel, or a couple of fox squirrel babies. And here we have a gourami, little tadpole, little fish. Find out more about those. A nest is welcoming. Many birds assemble a cradle for their eggs, knitting together leaves and twigs and softening it with grass, hair, moss, fluffy seeds, leaf skeletons, or even a snake's old skin. They might also add candy wrappers, plastic bags, and bits of cloth or paper. Birds are not the only animals that make nests. Orangutans climb into the high forest canopy where each day they braid a new bed of strong branches and line it with a mattress of leaves and twigs. On rainy nights, a woven umbrella of leaves keeps them dry. So this is a blue jay nest. So you can see the eggs in the middle, and all around the sides are twigs and leaves, pieces of string that they found. I see a pop can tab there. There's a snake skin down here in the corner. All sorts of things go into making these nests. A nest is enormous or tiny. So here are two examples. One of the largest birds' nests is the dusky scrub fowls. Their mounded nests are made of decomposing leaves and twigs and can measure more than 36 feet, or 11 meters, in diameter, and are nearly 16 feet, or 5 meters high. That's so big. Here at the bottom, you can actually see there's a ruler in the number of feet across. So 36 feet across for this dusky scrub fowl nest. The smallest, oh, good stretch in the background. The smallest bird's nest, the bee hummingbirds, is a golf ball sized cup of moss, lichen, bark, and leaves, usually wrapped in spider silk. The stretchy silk lets the nest expand as the babies grow larger. So this is the bee hummingbird. You can see here at the bottom there's a little ruler that says it's 4 inches across. There's that tiny bee hummingbird, smallest bird in the world. Again, getting some more excellent stretching and some preening with our American kestrel here. A nest is spiky, papery, pebbly. We'll let it continue on the next page. Elf owls and cactus wrens select a prickly nesting place as a refuge from slithering snakes and other hungry hunters. So here is a cactus with the elf owl and the cactus wren. So the elf owls are living up in a hole here, and the cactus wrens look like they've assembled some nice kind of maybe a tumbleweed or something like that down here in the other cactus spikes. I want to make sure you see the head scratching from the American kestrel here. For papery, it says, hornets, yellow jackets, and paper wasps scrape fibers from weathered wood and chew it until it's a moist paste that dries into a tough, paper-like material. The bald-faced hornet queen makes a cell for each egg. So this is a nest of a bald-faced hornet. It's a lot of work for those papery nests. And then for pebbly, it says, the eel-like lampreys use their suction cup mouths to move stones the size of peas, walnuts, and even baseballs, and create depressions called redds in shallow stream beds. They lay their eggs in the redds and cover them with more pebbles to hide them. So they make a big nest underwater out of little stones. So these are those lamprey. They do look a lot like eels. The nests can even be bubbly. So here's the African gray tree frog. African gray tree frogs make a foamy nest for their eggs in branches overhanging water. With her hind legs, the female churns a substance secreted, or kind of made from her body, into a frothy mass that, in sunlight, hardens into a meringue-like crust, kind of like a cookie. A few days after the tadpoles hatch, the nest disintegrates, or kind of comes apart, and the tadpoles drop into the water where they can feed and develop into frogs. So here's this nest that was made out of foam and turns into this kind of crusty material. And then after they hatch, the little tadpoles have fallen down into the water. Pretty clever. And here's that gourami I was talking about earlier. They blow bubbles that pack together to form a nest that floats like a raft in still water. Under the bubble nest, the male and female spawn or produce eggs. Once the female has released her eggs, she swims away while the male carries the eggs in his mouth and places them in the nest. After they hatch, the baby fish, or they are called fry, swim beneath the gooey nests where they are guarded by the male until they are ready to strike out on their own. So here's what a gourami looks like. Very colorful, kind of small fish. And then there's that nest of bubbles that are kind of floating around. Oh, this is excellent. I'm going to pause. She just made a pellet. I was covering it up a little bit, but hopefully you got to see it. So whatever food this American kestrel ate kind of towards the end of yesterday, she finished digesting and then had cast up as a pellet. So that kind of, it always reminds me of if you've ever seen a cat kind of produce a hairball where it kind of looks a little bit like throwing up. So if you were wondering what she was doing in the background, that's what that American kestrel was just up to, was coughing up a pellet or casting a pellet. Okay. A nest is hot. Some South American ovenbirds forage an adobe oven made with thousands of mud and clay pellets. Baked in the sun, the nest is a cozy place for their eggs. You can see why they might get their name ovenbird, huh? If they're making little tiny ovens for their nests. So you can see one of the birds poking its head out. So it's the ovenbird. An alligator piles decaying plants and mud to create a mat. In the center, she digs a hole where she lays her eggs and then, with her forelimbs and jaws, covers the nest with more vegetation to keep them warm until they hatch as squeaking babies. The temperature of the nest determines the sex of alligators. So whether or not these alligators are boys or girls kind of depends on how warm or how cool that nest is, which is always really interesting. So that is the American alligator. You can see some of the babies just starting to come out of these eggs. Another excellent head scratch here from Sienna. A nest is hidden. This is Kemp's Ridley sea turtle. In spring and summer, tens of thousands of female Kemp's Ridley sea turtles ride the waves together onto Gulf Coast beaches and drag themselves up to the dunes. They use their hind flippers like shovels to dig a pit in the sand. After the turtle deposits her round, leathery eggs, she tamps down the sand with the underside of her shell and flings more sand over the nest to hide any sign of it. So you can see her digging that nest and using her flippers, those kind of nice little paddles that she has, to kind of put all that sand over the eggs to keep them nice and hidden. And there's the water in the background. The platypus, one of only 2 mammals to lay eggs, hollows out tunnels or burrows along stream beds. With her tail, the female carries moist plant matter deep into the tunnel to make a nest and lays soft-shelled eggs the size of marbles. She adds plugs of soil to the tunnel to protect the eggs from rising waters, predators, and changing temperatures. Here they are after they've hatched, so you can see the platypus with 2 baby platypuses. We'll call them platypuses. A nest is neighborly. There is safety in numbers. Some nest builders live in colonies where there are more ears and eyes to raise an alarm when predators, or animals that eat other animals, are nearby. Bioweavers build nests that hang from thorny trees or palm fronds like upside-down bottles. Swinging in the air like from a woven tube, each nest is protected from lizards, snakes, and bigger birds. In towns of hundreds of inhabitants, Black-tailed prairie dogs make grass-lined nesting chambers within the labyrinth of burrows. When a predator is spotted, the prairie dogs bark to warn their neighbors that danger is near. So these are the bio-weavers. You can see that they've really kind of knitted together or woven together these beautiful nests that are kind of hanging down. And then here on the bottom, you can see this prairie dog colony. There's some babies protected in the middle, little pockets of grass and tunnels. And then here on the side, you can see that's what a prairie dog looks like when it's calling to warn its neighbors about predators. So if maybe it saw a big hawk flying overhead, it would raise its legs up and yell really loud so that all the prairie dogs knew. Very neighborly. Army ants make living nests called bivouacs. Clinging to one another's legs and jaws, or mandibles, they form a writhing ball of millions of ants, suspended from a branch by a chain of more ants. Inside are chambers for the queen, a brood of eggs, newly hatched larvae, and food. So here's that big ball of ants hanging down from underneath a nice big branch. So inside of there, that's all that stuff going on with the queen and the larvae. The main title for this page is A Nest is Peculiar. So here it says, cave swiftlets concoct a nest made entirely of saliva or spit. Swinging its head from side to side, the male spits long, pearly strands onto the wall of a cave that harden into a lacy bowl when exposed to air. Bird's nest soup, made from swiftlet nests, is among the most expensive foods eaten by humans. So you have the cave swiftlets you can see on the side of the cave, and then these are those nests that they made basically with their own saliva or spit. Pretty peculiar, definitely. Here it says, a nest is muddy. Flamingos erect a heap of mud, grass, and stones up to 12 inches, or 30.5 centimeters, tall, and then lay a single egg in a depression at the top. The height protects the egg from changing water levels and excessive ground heat. Both parents feed their hatchlings crop milk from their digestive tracts until they leave the nest. So that crop milk is food that they've kind of broken down into a kind of a thick liquid that they can feed their babies. So here are the flamingos. You can see they're in the water, so they've had to build these very tall kind of pillar or kind of tower nests to be able to stay out of the water. So there's one sitting on a nest, and here's what the egg looks like underneath. Having to use those long legs and those long necks to take care of a little egg always looks a little silly. Oh, I don't know if you could tell. There are like 4 different feathers that just flew off of her when she roused just now, which is great. Get rid of those old feathers, grow in new ones. A nest is adopted. Some creatures choose nests made by others to brood their offspring. Cowbirds and common cuckoos lay their eggs in nests of other birds, where they are hatched and raised by a mother of a different species. The buff-breasted paradise kingfisher flies like a torpedo at a termite nest, smashing into the hard mound with its beak, and sometimes dying on impact, to blast a hole into the side. Inside the mound, they peck out a tunnel leading to a chamber where they lay their eggs. Termites seal off the tunnel from the inside so that their nests are separate. So here we have a big termite mound, these big giant structures made by termites. You have the kingfishers who have made their own little home. And then over here you can see all the tunnels and holes that the termites would still be living in. So they're able to kind of take advantage of all the hard work that those termites did to make a nest for themselves. It's pretty clever. Here it says, a nest is noisy. Buzzing, swishing, rustling, flapping, and humming with babies, but only until they are ready to fly, swim, or crawl away. So here's another nest made by a kind of flying insect similar to like a hornet or a bee called the organ pipe mud dauber. So they made these whole big kind of tunnels. You can see why they're called the organ pipe mud dauber. You can see the Kemp's Ridley sea turtles. You can see the prairie dog babies and that baby American flamingo down by its nest. So after all that noise, then a nest is quiet. So here we have that solitary hummingbird nest. No more babies in it. They've all grown up and learned how to fly and get around on their own. So very quiet. Oh, there's one more. Here are animals matching all the nests from the front. So these are all the different animals that we saw in this book, or most of them at least. And then we have the back page, which is more of that cool nesting material. So that was A Nest is Noisy, again, a sequel to An Egg is Quiet that we read a couple of months ago. So a lot of really cool nests. I don't know if I'll be able to move it around with her here. I'll see if I can show you a little bit. Hi. I don't want it to be scary. What we have here, we actually have a nest box. What do we think? If you're wondering about what an American kestrel would use, it looks like kind of like this, a big kind of box with a hole in it. Usually they don't actually have a perch in here, but there's like a little hole in the front, and this nice kind of box shape is what an American kestrel might use if it was using something made by people. Otherwise, they would use a hole in a dead tree, maybe a nice kind of like crevice in the side of a wall or a barn, something like that. But for the most part, they're looking for holes in dead trees or those kind of nice big nest box areas. Here, I'll turn this so you can kind of get a better view of her. She's much more interesting and exciting. Get a good view of her when she stretches out her wings, maybe. I also have a nice little piece of food here I might give her. But that is what the American kestrel would use for a nesting site, since we were just talking so much about nests. Can I zoom in? I've never actually tried to zoom in using this. Get her a little bit more centered. I know, she's pretty small, so I want to make sure you can actually see her. So I saw somebody asking, is this bird a boy or a girl? We talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but now that we're zoomed in, you can see it a little bit better. So for most raptors, the boys and the girls pretty much look the same. It's really hard to tell. Usually the only way to tell is that the females or the girls tend to be a little bit bigger, but that's kind of hard to tell if you're looking from a distance through a pair of binoculars or something like that. But American kestrels are one of the relatively few raptor species where the males and the females, or the boys and the girls, tend to look a little bit different. So you can see on this bird, she's got some nice kind of brownish stripes on her chest and tummy. And then she has the brown and black stripes on her wings. And those are a couple of really big features that tell us that she's probably a girl. The boys have kind of blue-gray wings, and instead of having stripes, I always say, instead of wearing stripes on their tummies, they actually have polka dots instead. So the boys have polka dots, and the girls tend to have stripes. So they look a little bit different. So we're pretty sure that this bird is a girl. So we call her Sienna after that kind of brown color that's so important for American kestrels. Perfect for camouflage, blending in if they were out kind of sitting either with their chicks or if they were sitting in a nest, something like that. If it was a little bit more exposed, be great to be a little bit less flashy than the males who tend to be pretty brightly colored. So that way she can stay pretty safe. So an American kestrel female or girl out in the wild could stay pretty safe while she was helping to take care of those eggs. She's working on a little piece of quail right now. So there's a couple little bones in there that I think she'll probably finish eating, but they're kind of big. I also have another little chunk of food here I might give her as well. A piece was a little bit too big. You can also see she's using her feet to kind of grab onto the piece of food, so it's kind of like she's standing on it, and then using her curved, sharp beak to kind of tear it into pieces. And you can really see right now she's having to use some like really strong muscles kind of across the back of her neck and her back to be able to really rip that food into pieces. You can also see the very long, narrow tail and the very long, pointy flight feathers that she has. really classic falcon style feathers. So the American Kestrel is the smallest species of falcon that we have here in North America. Believe it or not, there are smaller falcons in the world. There are some pretty tiny other raptors as well. So this is not actually too close to the smallest kind of raptor that we could have, but they are the smallest falcon that we have here in North America. So falcons tend to be bird hunters, and so the American Kestrel has that same really fast, very agile hunting style. So able to turn really quickly, being able to kind of swoop down and change directions very fast. So you need that long tail to serve kind of like a rudder for steering, and then the really long pointy flight feathers to be able to change direction very quickly. And as she was actually turning around, you might have been able to see maybe why this bird lives with us, because I saw someone ask that as well. So this particular American Kestrel, we don't know exactly what happened, which is pretty common for a lot of birds. We can maybe make some guesses. But for her, we're not sure exactly why, but when she came into the Raptor Center, she'd been in some sort of situation where the very end of one of her wings was actually entirely removed, so it was cut off. So she's actually missing the very end of one of the wings, and that's where those very long flight feathers grow from. So because she's missing that part, she can't grow those new feathers either. So she actually, on one side, she has those very long, classic falcon flight feathers, and then on the other side, she's actually missing those. So she's not able to fly nearly as well as she would need to be able to go out into the wild and hunt grasshoppers and dragonflies and other birds and mice and little snakes and lizards, things like that. All things she would need to be able to go out and hunt, but she just would not be able to fly nearly well enough to do that. Right now she can do maybe some short hops is about as good of flying as this bird can do. So excellent at teaching people and being, as you can tell, very fluffed and relaxed in front of people and cameras, but so definitely has a new job here at the Raptor Center doing that, educating instead of going out and hunting. I'm seeing, somebody's out watching an egret right now, which is awesome. I love being able to see these birds out in the wild, or non-raptors out in the wild watching them fish. I will say, I was just getting pictures from one of our part-time presenters who was seeing some American Kestrels out in the wild and sent me some really cool pictures. If you're looking for American Kestrels, they're pretty small, so they're not as big and obvious as your red-tailed hawks or your bald eagles. But if you're looking for them, I usually find them if I am out in a more rural area, so a state park. If you're, especially in the upper Midwest, I see them in state parks a lot. If they're the state parks with the kind of nice big open prairie areas, nice big grassy areas with nice tall grasses. A lot of our local regional and even local parks also have a lot of these really great restored prairie areas where you can find American Kestrels. I'll also see them too, if you're a passenger in a vehicle, please do not birdwatch and drive. But I'll see them too if I'm out driving in kind of rural, like country roads. I'll see them either sitting a single bird on an electrical line or like on a tree branch that's kind of hanging down low next to those grassy areas near the road or near our kind of farmer fields or big meadow areas. That's where I'll usually see them. You'll see them, I'll show you what I mean. If I take out this piece of food, you might notice that tail flicking is very classic American Kestrel. They're about the same size as a mourning dove, but if you see that tail flicking, or you'll also see the head bobbing, you might be able to identify them pretty quickly as an American Kestrel. That tail bobbing is a really great way of making sure you can identify them, even if you can't see the colors or you're driving so you can't really stop and slow down. But you can see it pretty well. So that's where I normally am able to spot them. So anywhere with those nice big open kind of grassy areas. Right now they might still have some chicks around, so it's probably a little bit noisy. I'll oftentimes see, you'll see a nest box kind of up on a big pole in the middle of a grassy area. And that way you can spot one of those kind of human-made nest boxes that we've provided for birds like American Kestrels or other kind of native birds to be able to nest in, again, especially in your state and regional parks. Got a lot of them there. A lot of appreciation for the fluffiness of this particular American Kestrel right now. She's just In general, when a bird is this kind of relaxed feather, kind of relaxed body posture, it's great kind of feedback. Oh, excellent. Natural behavior, wonderful. That a bird is not really worried about what's going on in here. So the camera and the books and things moving around, no big deal. You did also get a nice, wonderful close-up view of a very important natural behavior, which we might call, to be polite, we might call going to the bathroom. But for birds, we actually call it muting. They produce mute, kind of like the mute button on a TV remote. And we call it that because it's not just one kind of waste. It's all of a bird's waste coming out all at the same time, all from the same place. So a little bit different than how us mammals eliminate our waste or go to the bathroom. So we call it mute. So what you did is called muting, which is always very fun. So next time you are cleaning off your vehicle or something like that, you can think about, this is mute. How interesting. What a very efficient way of getting rid of your waste after digesting food. So the one last thing, so why do they bob their tails like that? Always a really good question, trying to figure out why exactly birds, especially like a larger species of birds, has these kind of similar behaviors. Let me give her one more piece of this. So that tail bobbing, I generally see it when they're kind of paying attention to something, as kind of a very kind of broad way of saying that. So for example, you'll see when she's just kind of sitting and she fluffs out all of her feathers and kind of relaxes her posture, her tail isn't usually doing that bobbing. But as soon as I say, reach into the food cup and start to take out a piece of food, you'll see it start back up again. Or earlier, I had her in here just to kind of sit for a little bit. Gotta clean off her feet. And then I came back in, she kind of perked up her posture and started kind of bobbing that tail. So like, okay, what are we doing next? What's going on? I have to pay attention. So that's kind of a very broad way of trying to explain kind of what we're looking at there. So tends to just happen for American Kestrels, not a very common behavior in other falcons. So just kind of a particular behavior that American Kestrels have that we tend to see when kind of need to pay attention to something. So really good questions. See, I don't think I missed any other ones because I think we are just about out of time. So yeah, and then I didn't get to say this earlier, but it's one of my favorite things. So especially because a lot of people have been doing a lot of baking lately, if you happen to have a full stick of butter at home, you can go into your fridge, you can take it out and hold it in your hand. That's about as much as this American Kestrel weighs. So she weighs about 110, this morning she weighed 110 grams, which is about, if you count out 110 paper clips, or you hold about one stick of butter, that's about 1/4 pound. So that's about how much she weighs, if you're wondering about kind of size comparison. So underneath all those fluffy feathers, she is quite a small bird. Take a look around. Somebody noticing roadrunners tend to do the tail bobbing thing. I know we have a couple of sandpipers here in the upper Midwest. One in particular, I think the spotted sandpiper, that does like a really similar kind of tail bobbing thing while it walks. So always really interesting to think about these kind of species-wide behaviors. I always think it's so interesting. So I think that'll finish us off for this week. So thank you all so much for joining us for Reading with Raptors. If you missed it at the beginning, take a look while you're on our Facebook page already. Take a look. We just posted I think, very cool video about one of our latest online program offerings, our Raptors Zoomies, where we are kind of popping in on meetings, online gatherings, things like that, to be able to present a kind of little short presentation with a bird. So we were able to do that to help kind of continue to raise funds for the work that we're doing here. We're still really busy with our finishing off the baby season of raptors and getting into the summer season with all of the juvenile young raptors getting into all sorts of trouble. So we still have plenty of birds coming into the clinic, and none of them are leaving us forwarding addresses for their bills. So we are trying to raise money to help us continue our work in taking care of around 1,000 wild raptors every year. So definitely check that out. We also right now have a little bit of a contest where we are drawing the name of a person or group who is one of our frontline responders right now. So check out that as well. You can submit a name and they can get a free Raptor Zoomie. So a free kind of Raptor Zoom bomb to see a raptor and kind of be able to give back a little bit to those folks who are doing so much work in our community. So with all of that, definitely, like I said, check out the rest of our Facebook page, and we will see you all back here again next week for more Reading with Raptors. Thanks, everyone.